Hi, guys. Welcome to the Stronger Marriage Podcast with Trey and Lee. We're glad you joined us today.
Hello, everybody.
Welcome to the Stronger Marriage Podcast with Trey and Lee. On this podcast, you'll hear real topics about real life. They cover everything from married sex to raising kids to loving your spouse so much that you're willing to forgive them for occasionally being the most annoying person in the world. Trey and Lee have raised 4 boys, been married over 30 years, and somehow still really like each other. And now, live from the metropolis of Childress, Texas, a place so flat you can watch your dog run away for 3 days. Here are your hosts for the Stronger Marriage Podcast, Trey and Lee Morgan.
Glad everybody's here today. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, everybody. We've got kind of a neat topic today that we're going to talk about that we haven't done before.
No, really is kind of neat. I really think we need to kick off with why we didn't podcast last week.
Oh, that's probably a good call. Yeah.
Somebody has said, where was last week's podcast? We were in Lubbock, Texas, meeting a brand new grandbaby.
Yes, we were.
And that took priority over everything.
Yes, that took precedence over everything.
We got to love us some new granddaughter. So this is our first. We are Cloud 9. Is that a good word?
Yes, yes. Maybe even above Cloud 9.
Cloud 10.
Yes, can't wait to get my hands on her again.
Yep. We're anxious to see her. You can't get enough of them grandbabies. We've never experienced that. This is all new stuff, but it is fun stuff. So it is good stuff. Today we're talking stories. We are talking marriage stories. We're talking about what your story is. We're going to talk about the importance of telling your story as a married couple. It's just so important.
It is. Your kids need to hear your marriage story. You need to be reminded of your marriage story every once in a while.
That's it. You need to remind yourself of it, where you've come from, and how you got there. Personally, I love when I can sit down with couples and we're just all visiting, and I get to ask questions like, how did you meet? Or a lot of times, tell me your story about how y'all fell in love. I think that's great. And your kids, your grandkids, you as a couple need to talk about this pretty regularly. It's healthy to share your marriage story. Now, you may have a great marriage story. You may just feel like, man, we have the perfect fairy tale story. But not everybody has one of those. Sometimes your story is a little different. Yours may be a really winding road with a lot of peaks and valleys. You may have just started writing your story. You may have been married 2 or 3 years and you're just beginning your story, but it's still good to talk about your story, how you met, these sort of things. Some of you may have a story that sounds a lot like a nightmare, and don't give up, all right? Because sometimes we learn from our pasts and past mistakes. We visited with a lady recently who said on one of our social media pages on Instagram, I loved it. She said, I've married 2 abusive husbands, physically abusive. She said, I chased them down. They fell in love with me, married them. Neither were good marriages. She said, the 3rd marriage, I let God bring me a man instead of chasing one. And she said, I've had 7 years of fairy tale marriage.
That is pretty cool.
And so your marriage may have a lot of turns and curves and good and bad, and the main thing is it's your story. So make it your story.
Yeah. You may not come from a healthy family, or a healthy marriage may not be in your background, but you can build one.
Try.
Start right now and build a healthy marriage.
You may be in a bad situation right now, and you go, my story is not good right now. Work on building a good story. But your story is whatever it is, and you have to go from there. And maybe you weren't raised in a home where there was a great story. You decide you're going to build a good story. You make that your goal and your plan of what you're going to do. So let's talk a little bit about our story. Now, we want to share with you a few things about us, and then we're going to talk about a couple of things that we'll sum up and give you a little bit of homework. But we have a story. We love our story. Our kids know our story. we met very, very young.
We did. We went to church together, and I think we probably knew each other for a long time before we really.
We were like little kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before we ever really noticed each other.
Yeah. And so our story's kind of interesting, and I love our story. I think it's a great story. Honestly, the first time I ever remember you, the first time I can ever remember you is when I was probably, I actually don't know, I am older than Lee. I'm 4 years older than she is, and we'll tell you that story too here in a minute. But I remember when you were in probably junior high, and I told a buddy of mine, one of these days when you get older, that girl right there is going to be so cute. I remember telling a friend of mine that she is going to be so cute when she grows up. Just because you were just a pretty girl at that time. Now, I barely remember that, but we were in what we called youth group together. Mm-hmm. And really our relationship began by you. I don't know if you were the pursuer, but you're the one that kind of kicked it off.
Yeah, I mean, my best friend and your best friend were brother and sister. And so my best friend was dating a guy, and he had a friend that just kept really, trying to convince me I needed to go out with him, and I was not interested at all. And so I finally just told him, I made up a story and told him I had a boyfriend, and, you were older and you were big, and he just needed to leave me alone.
Yeah, and that's where the 4 years older,
so,
you had to find somebody bigger and older that
right,
you could say,
a little protective.
This guy's my boyfriend.
Yeah, so I think I told you, hey, I kind of did a thing and told this guy that you were my boyfriend, so could you just kind of play along for a little bit until he decides he's going to leave me alone? And
so we started pretending. The first part of our relationship was all built on a myth.
That's right.
It was all built on fake. We were pretending to be a boyfriend and a girlfriend for the sake of a relationship. And I guess I was just being the really nice guy trying to help you out.
Guy,
yeah.
But I did think you were pretty cute.
Well, I appreciate that. You were a smart girl right then. We had, I remember one night you riding with me to somewhere. We were leaving somewhere. My mom saw you in the pickup with me, and I had one of those bench seats in my old pickup. And so you were sitting right next to me. We were doing a good job pretending. And you were scooted right over next to me. And I remember when I got home, my mom said, who was in the pickup with you that was like all snuggled up right next to you? She was being a mom, and I said, well, that was Lee Keeney, and I think she was a little caught off guard. What do you run around with Lee Keeney for? Because she's so much older. And I think I told her at the time the story, but we went from pretending to actually for about 4 years, actually off and on dating again.
Yeah.
And so we knew each other for 4 years. We kind of did high school together, although I was older than you were. So we had a lot of time to we actually kind of grew up together in there of a couple of kids.
That's right. And we dated really young, and a lot of people said, this isn't a good idea. There were people that thought we'd never make it. And 32 years later, we are proving them wrong.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Our job is to prove those folks wrong. We still remember you had somebody that said, I think they were just teasing you, but I think they were serious. I'll pay you $20 if you'll dump this guy because it ain't going to work.
Yeah. Oh, and I remember my older sisters. They're a lot older than me, and they couldn't believe that Mom was letting me date somebody 4 years older. And I remember getting ready for the first date, and they came in there, Mom, can't believe you're letting her go out, and Mom was like, oh, I'm not worried about it. It's not going to last more than a couple of weeks anyway. So, even my mom, and she loved you and she loved your family. And that was the only reason that she did let me go out with a guy 4 years older, was because our families knew each other well.
So we started dating and dated during that time, and the neat thing was this was kind of old school, of I'd have to go to your house and pick you up on a date and talk to your mom and dad and find out what time you were supposed to be in, and that was kind of how we started off. We had no fancy proposals. Today the
Oh my goodness, it's such a production.
oh my goodness, and we had been talking for 2 years. Hey, are we going to get married next year or whenever it is?
Yeah.
And so there was no get on my knee and here's a ring. It was, I think we were just sitting there talking one time, and I said, you said something about graduating from school next year, and I said, are we still planning on getting married? Yeah, let's get married after we married. Lee was 18 years old, and I remember saying, well, I guess we'll get married next summer. And you said a very scary thing at the time that I had not thought of. You're 17 years old.
Yeah.
And I'm still living at home, and you said,
Are you going to ask my dad?
Are you going to ask my dad if we can get married? And I remember thinking, wedding is off. I am not asking your dad. That is not going to happen. He was a very big guy, and I had a lot of respect for your dad. He was a very good man and still is a good man. But I thought it was humorous because I thought, no, not going to happen. And I don't know if we ever had the big "can I marry your daughter" talk. I think actually what happened was I think you broke it to your mama and just said, we're talking about getting married next summer. and her words were, if I remember right.
She said, I knew it was coming. I just didn't expect it this soon.
Yeah.
Which wasn't soon. I mean, we dated for a long time, but I was very young.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and that is true. But I had gone off to school for 1 year of college without you, and I hated it. It was just not fun. When you have a friendship, not just a boyfriend-girlfriend friendship, but when you make friends and you become best friends, one of the things that happens when you're dating is you go from hanging out with all your buddies to all of a sudden it's like, I just want to spend time with my girlfriend. And I went off to college by myself and for a year while you finished your senior year in high school, and it was miserable. I just was like, man, I don't want to do this if I can't do this without her. And so I was excited when that time came, and we got married after you graduated from high school. So that's kind of where we were.
Yeah, that wasn't a fun time. Back in those days, we had to send letters to each other. Phone calls were long distance. They cost money.
Yeah, during our engagement time.
While we were engaged.
we were 2 hours away. You
Yeah.
didn't just jump in a car and drive somewhere for 2 hours. I didn't have any money whatsoever, but it was phone calls and it was letters, and there were no text messages or anything like that. So that's kind of our love story, and that's how we fell in love. But I do have a really important question.
What's that?
Well, we started off our relationship pretending to be boyfriend and girlfriend. Now, 32 years later and 4 kids, we're not still pretending, right? We're good to go
I
from
think
here.
we're
Okay.
good.
I just want to make sure
we are good.
that at some point I don't want you coming up to me and going, all right, I think we've got him run off now.
Yeah.
Thank you for your help. I'm out of here. Yeah, that wouldn't be a good deal. But there are some things that during our, we've got 4 boys, and through our 32 years of marriage, we've had ups and downs like everybody else has. We've had tough things. We've had bad stuff happen. We've had good stuff happen. We've both buried parents. We have had a miscarriage. We've had dealt with cancer in our family twice. You just go down the list, and our marriage has not been problem-free. It has not been all peaks. There have been valleys, and those are things that we've had to deal with.
That's true. That is very true.
That is part of family, and everybody goes through there, but it makes your story of who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. And, our marriage hasn't always just been, like, rosy. We've gone through times of, trying to figure out, how do we do this? Why are we getting on each other's nerves so bad? Or, why are we so busy that we can't spend time together, like we should be? And just things that we've had to work through.
Things that we've had to adjust to.
Mm-hmm.
There have been times where, not seasons, I'm not sure I'd say seasons, but there have been times where we loved each other. We just didn't like each other real well.
Exactly.
And so we
That's
had
normal
to work
for
through.
marriage.
I
Yeah.
think it is.
And I think a lot of marriages give up when they get to the point of feeling like that. They just feel like, I don't like you. And they equate that with, I don't I'm not in love with you anymore, you know.
Right.
And so we've talked about that. You don't fall in and out of love, you choose to love. And during those seasons of I don't really like you very much, you still get up every day and you choose to love your spouse. And then, you know, until you just kind of work your way through those times. And you will work your way through those times if you're patient and you work at it. And you'll find that your marriage is even stronger than it was before you hit that season.
Yeah. You don't just marriages don't grow by everything being peachy keen or all roses and perfect all the time. Peachy keen, is that a word we use?
Peachy keen, I don't know. That's an oldie, I think.
Okay.
Maybe
all right.
new for some of these guys.
Somebody may need to look that up on Google. But so let's talk for a second as we kind of close out some thoughts here about our marriage story. What are some things that we did right, and what are some things that we have done wrong in our marriage? And so let's talk about some things that we did right. Let's talk about the good, and then we'll talk about some things we haven't done well. From a very young age of two very young kids that got married, immature. I was 4 years older, but I have no doubt I was less mature than you were. But one of the things that we've done right is we have always focused on our marriage. We went to retreats, marriage workshops, marriage seminars. When people were offering those, we would go every chance we got. And we think that was a huge blessing as we look back now, because it helped us to kind of discover one another. We watched film strips. Back in the old days,
Faulkner and Burkini.
Yeah, and back in the old days, they had marriage workshops, and they might be on film, and we'd go sit and watch those things and kind of learn about each other. And I remember sitting through some of them, going, kind of looking at you, and you going, me looking at you and going, is that really how women are? And you going, is that really how men are? And so we did well by focusing on some marriage stuff like we were supposed to. We read books together.
We did.
Marriage books is what we're talking about.
Yeah, it's so important to, even if you feel like you have a good marriage, which we did, to just keep on your toes and keep reminding yourself through reading books and going on retreats and going to workshops and finding, a podcast. Those kinds of things will help.
Man, I wish that had podcasts back in our day.
Oh my goodness!
Do you remember before we got married, somebody had asked us, "Did you have premarital counseling?" And we said, "What does that mean?" We went, that was kind of new back then. We highly recommend that now.
Right. We did kind of take a little personality test. I think your mom recommended, and we did that. But I'm not sure we didn't really do a lot with it even after
but somebody asked us, said, did y'all do a little counseling? And we said, no. And he said, I have some tapes. And I need to thank him. He's still alive. But I need to thank him because he said, I have some cassette tapes. All right, some of you folks under 24 need to Google cassette tapes, okay? I have some cassette tapes, and I want you to take them. And we were in California driving back. I had a job that summer, and you had flown out to see me. We were driving back to Texas, and we listened to marriage cassette tapes the entire way back. And so that was such a blessing. And so, worst thing you can do is just go, we'll figure it out as we go. Mm-hmm. We tried hard to educate ourselves. And whether that was listening to, man, how awesome would it have been to have marriage podcasts back then? And it's, I'll be honest, I get frustrated with people sometimes that somebody, I'll get a call from a little wife or a husband, and they'll just go, man, I'm trying and my marriage ain't working. And we'll say, hey, read this book. And they'll go, I don't like to read. And I'm like, let me come over here and let me choke you. Do you not love your marriage? Do something to fix your marriage and make your marriage better. And it doesn't matter if you don't like to read.
That's right.
If it will bless you, you do it.
There's no quick fix. There's no easy fix. But
put some effort in.
There is a fix. You got to put effort into it.
That's exactly right. So read a marriage book together. What's another thing that we did?
Well, we've always made God a huge part of our marriage. We met in church. And we just continued on with that. Always
go to church together on Sundays. We worship together and read Bible. We talk Bible verses together and pray together, and those are all very healthy things. We think that spiritual intimacy is kind of a part of marriage that a lot of people miss out on. We dated after we got married, and that was important. And I think we picked that up in a marriage workshop somewhere that we attended, the importance of dating. And so we continued to date. We tried to find, we tried aunts, grandparents. Man, Lee's oldest sister Mel was so good. I don't know how many times we'd show up and go, "Can you watch our kids so we can go, have supper date somewhere, or go stay a night in a motel and just be husband and wife for a little while?"
Yeah, she lived in the Dallas area, and
she was so good to us.
We would go down there, and she'd keep the boys overnight. We'd get us a hotel room, and we'd get to do some fun things in a big city that we weren't used to, living in a small town.
Every marriage needs to have an Aunt Mel. And so maybe you're listening to this and your kids are all gone and you're going, "We have lots of time." You be the Aunt Mel.
That's
all right? You find a younger couple and go, "Hey, bring your kids over to my house and we'll watch them. Y'all go out on a date."
Yeah, bless a young marriage. And we had several people that did that for us also in Childress and in Tulia, when we were raising where we lived when we were raising our boys. When we weren't going to drive out of town and see Aunt Mel,
they take them to the farm.
Yes,
they would, and
they just offered to keep them for several hours, so we could spend some time together. So yeah, do that for a young couple, and it will bless their marriage tremendously.
Now, it was hard with young children to take trips. It really was.
Yeah, those didn't happen very often.
But as they got just a little bit older and we could leave them overnight somewhere, we would do that. And that was a healthy thing we did, was we tried to, let's go stay in a hotel, let's go to San Antonio for 2 days without the kids. And those were healthy things we did. Right. Those were all things we did that were healthy things. Yeah. And so those blessed us there.
We did plenty of things wrong. A big thing for us is that we are total opposites, and I think we've talked about that. And if you know us, you know that we're total opposites. And that was hard as newlyweds. I think that's what attracted us to one another to begin with. But then once we started living together and trying to, figure out how to do things, and we really realized how different we were and how different we did everything, and how different even that we thought about things. We kind of started trying to change each other. It's like, I don't understand why you're like this, and you didn't understand why I was the way I was.
And you're jumping ahead. We're going to talk about some things we didn't do well.
That's what I said. I was already.
Oh, you were ahead of me, so I was off in another little world.
Yeah.
And you know what we didn't talk about on here? In a sense that we tried to change each other, and I tried to fix you and you tried to fix me.
Yes, we tried
and I
to
know
fix each other.
You just said that. But another thing that just came to my mind that we didn't talk about at all was we didn't do financing very well either, if you remember right. No. As a young couple, nobody explained credit cards to us.
No, we got into debt, and that was tough.
We talked about that on another podcast and how to get out of debt.
Yes.
But
so those things
I didn't even mention that, but that's another thing we did wrong. Nobody explained to us 24% interest. I just thought it was the greatest deal in the world. We're only paying $12 a month, on a minimum balance of a card that we had $8,000 on. Can't beat that. I didn't realize that was killing us financially.
Right. Yeah. So we took a Dave Ramsey class, and we kind of got our budget under control. So just when you find yourself in problem areas like that, like we were with finances, and like we were with trying to fix each other and change each other because our personalities were so different. I happened across a study on personalities that really, really helped us to understand why we were the way we were, and to just realize, hey, that's how God made us, and it's a blessing. Really, I finally realized, hey, He's got strengths that really are my weaknesses, and then your weaknesses were my strengths. And so that's where we learned that,
blending is good.
Blending is good. Don't try to fix each other and change each other. Just use each other's strengths in marriage to your benefit.
Yeah. Another thing that I don't know that we did wrong, I just don't think we understood it at the time, and we've talked about this before as well, is I think we undervalued the importance of intimacy in our relationship. I think we saw it as no big deal. Sex was just kind of, it's awesome if it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And we did not realize the connection that it brought to a marriage. And I really think had we figured that out earlier in marriage, it probably would have blessed our marriage a whole lot more, because we've learned over time that it is a connection that God uses as a husband and wife to reconnect.
Yeah.
And times where we were not very connected, that we looked at each other and said, well, I don't like you and I don't like you, but we still are married. We just didn't realize how important intimacy was. And we've learned to do a much better job with that. And we've said before, you can't build a marriage on a great sex life, but it's pretty hard to build a great marriage without one. And so we've realized that is a very healthy thing. And as a Christian couple, it doesn't bother us to talk about that anymore, because there's not a lot of folks in our in the Christian community that are willing to talk about it. And we're always amazed at how many people go, we need to hear more of this. So obviously there's other people that feel the same way.
That's right. Communicate about all of those things. And that's really, the key to fixing all of it is that you got to start talking about it. You got to admit that there is a little something there that you need to work on. So, communicate.
One other thing I think that we maybe it took us a while. That would be our dog. Sorry about that. We are podcasting from home today. We have no fancy studio or equipment, but Ranger says to tell everybody hello. One of the things I think, lastly, that we didn't do real well on, it took us a while to figure out that we were really on the same team. And that may kind of fall under we tried to change each other. But I think for a long time, a lot of times we butted heads on stuff, and it was like, well, I think I need to win on this. Mm-hmm. And really, if I win and you lose, like I want that to happen, I lose, because we're one, we're the same team. And it took us a while to figure out that we are on the same team, and you win together, you lose together. And I guess we started valuing our relationship over our pride of being right.
That's right.
We can both be a little hard-headed sometimes.
Oh, just a little bit.
Yeah. So that's our story. That's our story. We have a story. You have a story. You need to share your story with somebody. Put your story on Facebook, how you fell in love. And remind yourself, if you have ever done any kind of marriage counseling and you go in and sit down to any good marriage counselor and go, well, I just really don't feel it anymore. One of the first things a good marriage counselor will do is go, tell me about how you fell in love. And you know what he's trying to do, or she's trying to do? She's trying to remind you of the connection that used to be there that is really still there. And she's trying to get you to tell your story so you can go, that's why I fell in love with him. That's what attracted me to her. And sharing your story is important. Our boys have heard our story, and we love sharing our story with them. And they love joking at us that I was so much older than you, and you were so young when we married, that they love to tease about, yeah, Dad, you met Mom while reading to her kindergarten class, big brother, big sister program. And
right.
So, but it's all right. They get to see a healthy relationship.
Yeah. And you never quit writing your story. We are still writing our story, and we'll continue to write our story. I posted something today on Facebook, and I don't even know if you've seen it yet or not, but my sweet Aunt Frida passed away yesterday, and her and Uncle Mert were married for 74 years and 8 months. And they wrote their story until yesterday.
Yeah.
And you don't ever quit writing your story.
Yeah. It is a good way to do it. Our story right now, the chapter we're working on right now, is we're empty nesters. That is a brand new chapter. We just started it.
It's a pretty
and we're
cool
grandparents.
Chapter. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's we're having a blast together. We're cooking together in the evenings. Mm-hmm. I'm enjoying that. She's trying to be patient with me sometimes in the kitchen, but she's doing a good job. We're doing what we want. We don't have to center or schedule around kids. We're kind of rediscovering some fun things to do together. We're kind of acting a little bit like newlyweds. It's like we have no kids in the house. We can do whatever we want to. And so we're having a good time. This is our story, and this is what we're writing, and this is where we are now. And wherever your story is now, you work on building an amazing story. You're going to pass that on at some point, somewhere. Our kids are going to tell the story of their mom and dad at a funeral when we pass someday, and they'll say, let me tell you the love story of my mom and dad. And it's important that we work to have a love story or a story that our kids can look at and go, I like their story.
Very well said. Yes.
Very well said. Thank y'all for hanging out with us today. We've hit our 30-minute limit, and we try really hard to not keep you too long or anything along those lines. But we're honored that you've come hang out with us today, and we're sorry that we missed last week.
Pretty good excuse.
Yeah. We don't have any more grandbabies on the way at this time, so
No.
hopefully we'll get back on schedule of once a week.
See you next week.
Have a great one.